Okay, hold on just a minute. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our session. And this is the first time actually we are doing this on an international basis. So we might be having a little bit of an issue on the connectivity. But if you do have issues on the connectivity, please let Timaradi know so she can let you back in, right? Because technology, in fact, is supposed to be our friend, but sometimes it actually can work against us. Right. Okay. So without further ado, let me just start. Okay. And welcome to everybody. Welcome to everybody who have joined in here. We are taking a look at delivering successful projects in challenging times. Okay. So I think that's an understatement. Challenging times. The key emphasis is the times that we are living in is very different from what we were used to before. So we have to approach projects in a very different way. Okay? The old methods do not work anymore, simply because the environment or the surrounding circumstances that we live in are very different. So the way we strategize projects, the way we think about aligning the projects with the objectives of the organization, okay, it needs a little bit of tweaking, right? So during the session, what I'll be doing is I'll be asking some questions as we go along because now it's about 3:05. I plan to do it for an hour or so, right? Now this is a technical presentation, and being a technical presentation, it has its drawbacks in the sense that it can actually get a little bit dry, simply because projects are not very sexy, as they say, right? But we will try and get something going, some interaction going. We also have a session after this for the questions and answers. So you can utilize that time to ask us questions on what you find are challenging areas of project management and how we can assist you to solve those issues, right? So you can, in fact, you can unmute yourselves as we go along. Feel free to ask questions, and I think Maradi is the one who's going to be coordinating this year. So welcome again. I'll just give you a brief background of myself, very, very brief. My background is in construction management and project management, right? So I've got my degree from Pittsburgh State University, Pittsburgh, Kansas. I did my bachelor's and master's there in construction and master's in engineering technology. I went to work for the environmental industry. I was working for a company by the name of Trinity Environmental Technologies. I still like environment a lot. Okay. I came back home in 1994 to Malaysia and I became a project manager. I was working there until 97. 97, we had the Asian financial crisis, right? For those of us who remember it. Things didn't work out very well. So in the same organization, I moved to facilities management or or property management. It's a very different world. It's an entirely different world because that is where you see the benefits of project manage. So if you do not manage a project well, right, especially on issues like quality, issues like safety, issues like, for example, structure, so on and so forth, you will end up during your facilities management time to fix it. So for the investor, they make their money not during construction or the projects, but they make their money on the downstream activity, which is your property management. So you can take anything, any of the projects you do, you're spending money in projects, you're utilizing resources in projects, but when it comes to getting the benefits, that's where the ROI or the net present value or the internal rate of return is calculated during the operation phase, right? So this is exactly what I saw, and it made me understand the importance of project management a lot better than if you're just working upstream. So a few years later, I went to finish off my law degree. I don't practice law, but I do arbitration. A little bit less these days. I'm more into agriculture. I've gone back to environmental. I love the agricultural industry. And I still do a little bit of property development on the side. The last session, the last one, I left blank because I have no idea what life is going to do to me. So I don't know, maybe in a few years' time, if we meet again, I'll tell you what I'm doing then. Right. So that's it for me. The workshops that I do, I've been doing this for the past 15 years. The workshops that I do actually is in construction, procurements and contracts, vendor management, risk management, and also PMP exam preparation, right? Once in a while, I get a request for NLP for project managers, but that's more on the soft skills side. The core trainings or workshops which I do are along the construction side, procurements, contracts, and risk management, okay? So all these are tied together simply because if you do construction, if you do any project, it doesn't have to be construction actually. If you do any projects, you will have to deal with procurement, you will have to deal with risk, and you have to deal with your vendors. That is inevitable. Okay. So all these actually form an ecosystem. This is an awareness that project managers have. So let's start. So you have a project. All of a sudden you go to work, and then there it is, your organization says, guess what, we're going to be doing a project. It can be anything. It can be IT-based projects. It can be an agile-based project. It can be a change management project. It can be something that you're opening up a new store, or you want to come up with a new coursework. That also can be a project. We see right now during the COVID-19, there's lots of healthcare projects that are going on. So basically a project, the definition of a project is anything that is temporary in nature. If it's temporary in nature, it must have clear and agreed objectives. And then you have a project, which is very different to what we have from operations. An operation is something that is ongoing all the time. That's what you will do in your facilities or your heads of department in your other departments, where you work in different silos. In a project, you can't work in silos. In a project, you have to put all the resources together to come up with a solution to a problem. So in other words, if you have a project, you have to ask yourself, what is the problem? So I'm going to ask you this question right now. If you have a project, what's the first thing you do? What's the first thing that you normally do in a project? Can I have some answers? And you can unmute yourself and you can shout it out. Anybody out there? What's the first thing you do when you have a project? Maybe any answers over there that they're given? At least one answer? Anybody's got an answer? Nobody on the chat group? We have 9 on the chat group. Let's see what you have. Right. Right. Anybody else? Okay. I see there's no answers on the chat group. Budgeting. Okay. Molika Weng, to everyone. Budgeting, timeline. Yes. Yeah. From Tra. Tra says define the goal, the purposes, and the resources. Very good. Excellent. Okay. So we have 2 answers. You plan for the project from Toy. I hope I'm saying the name right. From Votitan, to everyone, common goal. Yes, you must have a common goal. What is the objective? How can you benefit from this? Excellent answers. Somebody else? Anybody else? All right. One more and then we will move on. Common goal is good. Define the goals, budgeting, timelines, you plan for the project, you can, right? Okay. So all these are very good answers. So let's see what the answers are, what will be the right answers. Remember that we have to have a process. So these will be the common questions. What next? What should we do next? The problem is, if you work with different organizations and if you work with different countries, you will get different answers. Some of them will say we want to do the timeline first. Others will say no, we will need to know how much of money we have. The others will say what are the resources. Some others will say what are the objectives. All these are good answers, but there is a process in place. So we must understand, without a process in place, we can't actually do a project, right? So what do I do as an individual? What are we going to do as an organization? And what do I do as an individual? Where do I fit in? Now, most of the time, when we come into a project, we do not have the skills or the basic building blocks of a project. So we tend to do things on our own according to our own understanding. So say, for example, you are from the IT department and you want to do your project. You're more IT based. So you will only go to speak the IT lingo. Somebody who's from the finance department or the HR department or the design department, they speak their own lingo. So for the project manager, it's going to be very difficult because he's got to learn all the different lingos and put them together to get a project plan. So the main actor here, if you can say that, is the project manager, who's got to now give direction or must have leadership. They must have adequate leadership to gel all the different people in the team who come from different backgrounds into one cohesive unit in a very short time. You see, because projects are very temporary in nature. It can be 1 week. You can have a project that runs for 1 month, or you can have a project that actually runs for a couple of years. But it really does not matter, because all projects are temporary and all the resources are not permanent. unlike what you have in a functional department, right? So in a project, you have resources moving in and out. So this is the challenge for a project manager. So for the project manager, the first thing, as like somebody said, is you need to find out what is the business objective. Very important, first things first. Even before we start doing project work, we got to sit down and ask ourselves, what is the business case? Who has done the business case? What is the problem here? So all business cases are live documents which you must have throughout the project. So basically the question we are asking people is it desirable? Is it viable? And is it achievable? So achievable means in the given time for the given cost. Can we do the project? Can we do the work successfully based on the resources that we have? Desirability will be according to the investor who is putting the money into the project. How much do they hope to get back? So the investment part must be calculated. For example, the return on investment must be calculated. Then you might also do a calculation known as a net present value. Okay, so you have 2 or 3 projects and you want to select the project, and you say one project is going to end 3 years, the other is going to end in 6 years time, and the third project is going to be ending in 4 years. So in today's money, what's it worth? Net present value. So all these calculations are done in a business case. The business case is the main document in any project. If you remove the business case, the project ceases to exist, simply because we got nothing to shoot for, right? So that will be the guiding document. All the strategizing, the planning, the budgeting, etc., all comes from the business cases objectives. So we need to understand. So this is why it's important for the project manager and the team, right, to have a good understanding of the business case. Then you might also do a feasibility study. Sometimes a feasibility study is done at this stage to determine how feasible the project is. Feasibility means if you're going to say, for example, you want to build a power plant. Okay, the feasibility will tell you where you're going to build it, the logistics, the infrastructure, and when are you going to build it. So right now, everything is off the table simply because, people are very cautious these days where they put their money in. So it's not feasible to do the project right now. So the business case may be attractive, but the feasibility study will also play a very important part in where we do and when we do the project. So finally, when you get the stakeholders, when the stakeholders approve the project, then we take a look at the fundamentals of it. So for the project manager and the team, they're very concerned like the answers you gave just now, okay? How much of cost do we have? What's the timeline? What are the resources? This is what we call the iron triangle of project management. What's the iron triangle of project management? How much of money do we have? How much of time do we have? And what are the specifications of the scope? These are the main concerns, because if quality is of prime importance, then you must have enough of money. You must have enough of time, and the specification must be very clear. You cannot move into a project where the specifications are very high level, people don't understand it, then you get messed up, and then your quality suffers. Now, alongside that, you will have stakeholders. So stakeholders are very important in a project because the stakeholders can either make or break a project. So very early in the project, we do stakeholder analysis. Then we also do the risk management, right? So I'm going to ask you a question now. What kind of risks do you have in a project? What are the type of risks that you normally would anticipate that you say, okay, these are the risks that you will normally have in a project if you have not done a project? Or if you have done a project before, what are the risks that you face in the project? Can we have your feedback, please? Oh, can you go a bit slower? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Right. I will go a bit slower. I just saw that. Okay. So what are the risks that you have in a project? What kind of risks that you can think of? Challenges, good. No fun, no contingencies. Votitan says there's no contingencies. Tra says stakeholder management, very good. Stakeholder plays a very big important part in our project. Okay. Anybody else would like to contribute? I'm sure there's a lot of other types of risk that we have. Okay, funding is, you're talking about financial. What about political risks? Change of government might affect financial risks. Banks' policies change. What about technical risks? Specifications are not very clear. What about the organization risk? The organization itself, right, is not geared up for projects. They are more in tune with the operation side. They don't have people who are trained in project management. That means they don't speak the project language, right? So all these are the types of risks the project manager and the team need to sit down and they will need to ascertain. These are the risks. So if you take a look at it, right, you have your cost, you have your time, you have your scope, and you have your quality. Then stakeholders management, risk management, and vendor management. Vendor management is very important in a project because that comes from outside the project. Your whole supply chain, how are you going to manage the supply chain? You're going to buy something from somebody. So if you buy something, you need to understand contract management. What kind of contracts are we going to use? What are the terms and conditions in a contract, which can also mean risk? Because if the terms are not clear, then the contract or the vendor management is not effective enough. Then we go into all kinds of problems later on, claims management, etc., etc. Right? So all these are the constraints that we will have in a project. And also remember, we don't have much time. If a project is 1 month long, say for example, you have to massage all this into the project as fast as possible. That's why it's very important to have a team. The emphasis is you must have team members who understand the language of project management. If they don't understand the language of project management, then you're going to have a lot of conflict in the project. So when you go for meetings, for example, you're going to have people sitting down there who have no idea what is going on because they don't know the technical terms. For example, you might say we are going to do a critical part. What is a critical part? So they don't understand critical part. They don't understand the terms of risk, right? So it's actually you will have to start micromanaging. You meaning the project manager and the core team. You will have to start micromanaging, which is not good at all because you don't have time for that. So your team must be something that you will have that you can hit the ground running. So every project will have the three interests, the three areas of interest. Number one is, of course, you must fulfill the business needs. Is this project going to make money for you? If the project is not going to make money for you, then why are we doing it? So that's the business case. Is it still desirable? Is it still viable? Is it still achievable? Then the customer, the most important person in any project is the user or the customer. Without the customer, projects don't get done. Because in any project that we do, we always solve a problem for the customer. The customer can be external, the customer can be internal. Internal meaning your own internal project for the organization. So right now in Malaysia, I'm doing a project for Telecom Malaysia, which is the telecommunications company. They want to turn their organization into agile organization. From functional, they want to move to agile. So we're doing it phase by phase. So first the southern region, then the central region, then the northern region, right? So it's for internal use. So the customer is the one who determines what will be the end result. What are the objectives of this whole project? They're going to become agilized. Then you will have the supplier side. So all three must be used when you're doing projects. So the project manager, needless to say, must be a person who is technical and also must have a good understanding of the business, right? So if you only have somebody who is only technical in nature but does not understand the business, you're going to have problems. So you must be able to balance out. And you must also be somebody who is also a leader. So leadership, business acumen, and technical knowledge you must have that as a project manager. Okay, but more on the technical side, understanding the business and having leadership qualities, because today is a very challenging environment. the project manager and the team must be leaders also, right? So these are three types of things. Now, when you do a project, it's a very systematic way of getting things done. Projects just don't happen and they just don't get done in a very ad hoc basis. You have to approach it in a very systematic way. So how do we do projects? If you take a look at the screen here, you have a word known as life cycle right there. Life cycle is not a process. Okay, this is not a process. It is not a process. Process is mainly for quality in manufacturing. When you do project management, you have to have a life cycle. So the first thing we do in project is we initiate the project. I'll just write number 1. Second thing we do in project is we plan the project. Then we execute the project and we close out the project. That's number 4. And throughout, we do monitoring and controlling. Without monitoring and controlling, the project will go off on a tangent. It will go somewhere else, might end up somewhere else. So this is why it's very important for us to follow the life cycle. So for this workshop, when we do this workshop, I'll be emphasizing a lot on the life cycle. What do we do in initiating? What do we do when we plan for it? What do we do when we execute, close, and control the project? Right? So the whole workshop that we are planning to do, the couple of days, day 1 and day 2, will revolve around this. That's the main idea. So when we go back here, when we take a look at the 3 project interests, we're going to take a look at these business interests here and put them inside this. Initiating, planning, executing, closing, and then monitoring and control throughout. That is something that we have to do. Okay, so before we go to the next slide, I'm going to ask you this question, right? What are the different, like you say, for example, we saw this, right? We saw this just now. Sorry. Yeah. We saw that. What are the different areas that you think is important in a project? We saw, for example, time, cost, scope, quality, stakeholders, risk management, vendor management, right? What other areas you think are important in a project? What would you do if you had a project, you say, these are the areas I must address? Okay, can I have your feedback on that, please, if you don't mind? Let's go to your chat group. What are the areas that you can take a look at? What do you think it is? If you were to do a project, you say, yeah, these are the areas. For example, we need the money, we need the time, we need the specification, but these are also the other areas we have to take a look at. Anybody? Just give an answer. It doesn't have to be the right answer. Remember, we're all in it together. We're all here to learn. So yeah, time and stakeholder. Thank you so much, Tra. Okay, thank you so much. We need time, we need stakeholders. That's very good. Yeah, that's very imperative that we have time, okay, because project is all a human resource. Very good. Okay. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but I'm just going to read out your name as it is. Thai, Nguyen. Okay. Did I do good on your name, Thai? Okay. Human resource. Oh, thank you so much. That's very encouraging. First time too. Okay. Just a couple of more. Human resource. Very good. Human resource stakeholders. We have time. So if you were the project manager, in other words, if you were the project manager, what would you emphasize on? Oh, these are the areas we have to address. We cannot run the project without this. Sum has said human resource. Anybody else would like to contribute? Remember, we are not here It's not a test or anything. It's just, yeah, we're just having a chat, like a cup of coffee. We're sitting down and we're just, chilling out and just chatting about this. Okay. So, right. So we have human resource. We have human resource again. We have time. Okay. These all are important that we must have. These are the things that we have. But there's also a few other areas we need to address. So this is what we call the 10 knowledge areas of project management. So every project, doesn't matter what project you do, does not matter if it's going to be a large project or a small project or a medium project, a 1 week project or a few days project, it really does not matter. You need to address all this. So starting off with our good friend, integration management. So integration management, that's the main job of a project manager. That's your main job. So as a project manager, you need to put all the pieces together to give the objective of the business case. Remember the business case. So the business case says, for example, you need to install a new IT system in your organization. You're going to revamp the IT system. So that's your job. You got to get the right people in. You must understand how much of time. So we will take a look at the scope. There you see the scope. Scope means the specifications. Then you will see the time, or what we call the schedule management. The time, what is the cost? What are the quality levels? What are the resources that we need to have? The communication plan, very important, because 90% of the time in any project, we always communicate verbally and body language, both sides, right? Then we need to procure certain things. Procurement talks about the contracts with the vendors outside. What are the things that we need to have? So we need to buy those things. Then our good old friend, risk management, is always there. You cannot avoid risk. So we have to identify. Risk is 3 steps. Identify the risk, analyze the risk, and respond to the risk. And finally, stakeholder management. The stakeholders is just the stakeholders will remain from the start to the end of the project. So now let's take a look at stakeholders here. So altogether, you have 10 knowledge areas. You cannot do a project with any knowledge area missing. You can't do it. Imagine doing a project where you don't have a schedule plan. It's impossible. Now imagine doing a project where you cannot communicate, right? There's nobody communicating on the project. There is no paperwork. There are no meetings. There are no status reports. Nothing. Impossible to get it done. So what about quality? You need to have quality, because without quality, the customer won't be satisfied. You're always going to have problems with the customer on the quality issues. So all these 10 knowledge areas must be put together. And you as a project manager, that's your main job right there, integration management. Making sure each of these knowledge areas is put in the right mix. The right mix to deliver the objectives of the business case. It's always the business case, right? So all projects are about 2 things. What is the risk of the project and who are the stakeholders? So stakeholder management is very important. So we're going to do an exercise now on stakeholder management, right? So I'm going to ask you to give me any project. So I'm not going to give you the project. So I'm going to go back to our chat group here. I'm going to go back to the chat group. In the chat group, you give me a project. So let's pick a project. Okay. Any project have you, I mean, if you're doing a project now, or are you going to do a project, or have you done a project? Give us a project. We'll take that as a small case study and we do a stakeholder management. Any contributors? Anybody would like to share a project that they're doing now? Any projects? No projects at all? None of you have ever done a project before? First timers? Right? Okay, so let me give you a project then. Let me just give you a project. And this project we're going to be doing is a project, say for example, you're going to do renovation of your house. Very simple. You are now going to build a new house. Okay, instead of renovating a house, say for example, you want to build a new house, right? So you will see on the grid, there's two things. Power. Power means power to influence. And down here you have interest. Okay, what is your level of interest in this project? So I'm going to give you a few stakeholders. And then if you can unmute your mics, you can unmute your mics. If you can unmute the mics, then you can shout out the answer. Okay, so the project that we're going to be doing now is we're going to build a house, a new house from the ground up. So I'm going to give you one of the stakeholders' names. So remember, we're doing stakeholder analysis. So I'm going to give you a stakeholder's name. Say, for example, the architect, the one who's going to design the house. Now, how much of power do they have? Low power or high power? What do you think? You can unmute the mics. The architect. Is it low power or high power? Yeah, I can hear some sound in the background. Somebody, low or high power, please, architect?
High power.
Excellent. Your name, please?
Oh, I'm Tui.
Okay, thanks, Sui. So high power, okay, stay on the line. Don't think leave us, stay on the line. In terms of power, they got high power. In terms of interest, high or low interest?
High interest.
Fantastic. So they become what? They become?
Key player.
Exactly. So the architect now is a key player. So they are the ones who are the subject matter expert. They design the house. So their power is high, their interest is high. Now, you as the house owner, you are the house owner now, you are building the house, you are funding the house. So you are investing in the house. Is your power high or low? Same person or anybody else? As a house owner, is your power high or low? So you can answer that again.
I think everyone is typing in the chat box.
Ah, okay, all right. Because I'm using my tablet here. Hold on, just a minute. Yeah, okay. Hi, yeah. Everybody says hi. Right, good. So I'm going to take a look at the chat box right now. Okay. So I'm taking a look at the chat box right now, and the house owner, you have power which is high. What about the interest? Is it high also? You can put the answer in the chat box. Is interest high? Yes. Yep. Monica says yep. I like the answer. Yes and yep. Hi, yes. So Tia, Swan, to everyone says yes. Good. So now we have the architect and we have the house owner who got high power. Now, do you think they're going to have conflict? Do you think they might be having conflict? Yes or no? Because both got high power. One is the architect, one is the house owner. So the architect has got their own ideas. Yes, it's possible. So Tia says, yes, it's possible. Of course, it's possible. Good. So you see, as a project manager, if you're now the project manager for this, if they have employed you as a project manager, you have an architect who's got their own idea for design, and you have the house owner who also has their own idea because they're the ones spending the money. They are key stakeholders because they both got high power and they got high interest. Good. Now, what about a contractor? Let's go to a third person, a contractor. Do they have high power or low power? The contractor, the one who's going to build the house. Is their power high or low? Low power. Good. Okay. So Tia says low power. Yes, low. Tra says low. Yes, because they just have to wait. They have to wait for the contract documents to come. Only then they can tender. So they don't have a say in it. Right. So the power is low, but what is the interest? Is it high or low? The contract is high. Very good. Right. Got very high interest because they want to bid for the job. So where are they? Okay. keep informed. If you go back to your slide, if I go back to the slides here, they are keep informed. Contractor is a keep informed. So let me write owner. Owner is here. Then our contractor is here. Now, one more question. One more question for this. Now you have to go and get approval from the authority. You have to submit your plan to the local authority for approval. In terms of power, is it high or low for local authority? High. Good. So Tia says high. Good, because they determine zoning. The zoning is there, so they're going to say you can't build this house here, right? You can only build single-story house. You cannot put double-story house. Okay, good. Now, in terms of interest, is it high or low? Low interest. Good, good, good. So Tia, Tai, Molika, they have very low interest. So they become what? If you take a look at the grid, what do they become? Keep satisfied. So authorities become keep satisfied. So this is how we map them out. Mapping. So we're going to have a mapping. We're going to map them out here, and we're going to put them on the grid. That's called the power interest grid. Now, these people here, you got to be very careful, the authorities. Very careful. Because if you do not follow the rules and regulations, or if the contractor messes up, or the architect messes up, they can move here. They can become key players, but they become very negative. They become very dangerous. You see? So for the project manager, they must always keep an eye on the authorities. That means all the rules and regulations must be followed. If they don't follow the rules and regulations, the project gets into trouble. If the project gets into trouble, then you might have delay. Delay will cause extra cost. That is a risk. So remember, projects are about two things, the commercial risk and the stakeholders. So stakeholders, you need this. You need to map them out. And then you need to communicate with them. So all the time you must communicate with the architect, with the contractor, with the owner, with the authorities, and other people. That is why we do stakeholder analysis in a project, right? So everybody okay on this? You understand why? What is the importance of a stakeholder analysis? Okay. Right? So if we don't manage our stakeholders well, if we don't identify the stakeholders, if we don't manage them well, then we end up in problems, right? So this is the thing that we will take a look. Now, in the time that we have left, I'm just going to tell you a few things on what the project is, and then I'm going to open up for questions at 4 o'clock. So very early in the project, what we do stakeholder management. We take a look at the 10 knowledge areas. We took a look at the life cycle of a project, which is initiating, planning, execution, closing out, controlling the project. Then we also took a look at the 3 interests, okay, which is your business interest that we have. We also took a look at the user, who is the customer. We also must know the supply chain, how to handle the supply chain. And best of all, we need to understand, for example, where is that? We need to understand what are the constraints of a project. So all projects do have constraints, cost constraint, time constraint, scope constraint, and quality. Then we must take out the influence of the stakeholders. What kind of risk do we have in the project? How are we going to manage our vendors? Okay, so when we do that, then we can plan it. Like somebody said earlier on, how do we plan for the project? So project planning is very important, and that's the time that we take a look at the 10 knowledge areas. Remember our 10 knowledge areas? The integration, the scope, the schedule, the cost, all this must be finalized here. When we do planning, all must be finalized. So when we finalize, there's a word that we use that is known as baseline. All projects must have a baseline. That means when you compare it, when you're doing the work, how are we doing as per our baselines. If we are doing monitoring and controlling, we only compare to the baseline, actual versus plan. So when we do monitoring and controlling, I'll show you that later on, we do actual versus plan. So this is where the project manager and the team need to sit down, and they will need to come up with the details of the project. So the scope must be detailed, how much of time do we have, cost, quality, so on and so forth. And also very important to get what? Stakeholder approval on what? The budget. How much of money are we going to spend? Then we need to understand the team, who's going to be working. Team can also mean resource. What are the resources that we have? If a project is very complex, then the risk will go up. Risk will go up on the project. Okay? Then we must also change control, variation orders. So for that, I will give you a template. And very important to understand the contract selection. So planning takes a long time, especially the project is complex. If it's very simple, you do it in a very short time. So once the planning is over, that's when the budget, the stakeholders, everybody will say, good, now you can go the next step. The next step is we are doing the project. It's called execution. So remember this when we did our framework: planning, execute, control, closing out. So initiate the project, plan the project, execute the project, close out the project, and then we do controlling throughout the project. So this is where the work is being done. So when the work is being done, we do a lot of data collection. We collect all the information that's going on in a project. We also produce the deliverables, and we also need to coordinate the work. Now I'm going to ask you this question: what are the common difficulties? What are the common difficulties you have when you execute the project? You can put up in the chat group. What are the common difficulties you have when you're doing the project? If you've done projects before, this is what you experience all the time. These are very common things. Most of the projects will have them. Okay? Expectation of different stakeholders to keep everybody on the same page. Excellent. Yes. Stakeholders can be quite moody. You know, in the planning stage, everybody is happy, very gung-ho. The project must go along. But as the project is go along, they have change of mind. They want to change objectives. They want to change this. They want to change that. Keeping everybody on the stake of very good. Excellent. Excellent, Thai. Anybody else who's got some horror stories to share with us on project execution? Okay. Normally, when I sit and talk with project managers, they all have their own war stories or horror stories. And they say, watch out for these, right? But these keep happening all the time on projects. Anybody else would like to share? Different stakeholders, everybody on the same page? Monica, anything? Oh, Monica, budgeting and the real cost. Very good. Not enough money, not enough time. Common sob stories. We underestimated. We never thought this will happen. The risk that we never anticipated occurred. So we are short of cash. We're short of time. The vendor is giving problems. Okay, these are the common things. Okay, so who else wants it? Sathya, anything else from you? Okay, timelines, yes, aggressive. We underestimated timelines. We thought it's going to take a week, right? But it's going to take a week and a half to get this done. How come we were not given the data? How come we were not told of this? Or because stakeholder made last minute change. Who made the change? Who approved the change? You see? And then they want us to do extra work, but they don't want to give us more money. Very common. Real time and time plan. Yes. What we envision is going to be this way is completely different, because when we did the planning, it was in a controlled environment. A controlled environment. But when we do the project, open to everything. Right. So the ecosystem is different, right? when we do the project planning, the ecosystem is very controlled. Whereas when we move into the project mode, the ecosystem is different. All kinds of things happen there. Excellent. Thank you so much for your answers. Okay. So when you execute the project, it's very important for us to collect the data. That's why data collection and the information is of prime importance on the project. Because if we don't have this, we cannot do some analysis. We can't do analysis. Now we also have to take a look at the resources. Are they adequate? So the resources here will be three types of resource: human resources, equipment, and materials. Are they sufficient to finish the project? Human resource is very important here because human resource talks about the capability of the resource. Also availability. If you're working in a functional department, you must know who is available, who is capable. If somebody is capable but they're not available, then we have problems. We have problems already. Equipment, we must find out if it's going to be working, not working, repairs, etc. And materials. Materials talks about vendor. The vendor management. Right? So if we don't get our contracts done properly, if we don't have proper scheduling done for vendor management, it's going to come back to bite us. That's when we start panicking, and then we come up with all kinds of creative ideas and methodologies to get the work done at the expense of quality. So if we get the work done faster, remember, quality suffers. So we might have another problem later on. Trying to solve one problem, we create a few other problems. So that's what normally happens in execution if the planning is not done well. So planning must be done thoroughly. And another word for planning is honestly. Planning must be done honestly. Can we really do it for the given time, for the given cost, to the given quality level? If you can't do it, don't do it. Because remember, under contract law, it's liable. You're liable for that. So while doing the work, we will also control the project. So this is where we will do three things. In fact, four things. Number one, the information that is coming out, we have to bring it back to the baseline. Then from the reports that we have, we want to avoid certain things. So we're going to have meetings with our team members. So I'm going to ask you this question right now. When you're controlling the project and you have project team meetings, what is the most important meeting that you must have? Put it up on the chat group, your answers. What is the most important meeting that you will focus on during execution, not planning? In execution, when the work is going on, you're going to have meetings, right? So what do you think is the most important? What kind of meetings you say, oh, we have to get this done. We cannot do without this meeting. This meeting is a must. What do you think it is? Deliverables from the team, yes. How well the deliverables are doing, very good. That's a word that I didn't give you, but you use that word, so you have a good understanding of project management. Quality checks, excellent, because the information and the deliverables is going to tell us from the quality. So quality will come under monitoring and controlling. Right, excellent. Excellent, Voti and Molika. Right. So what kind of meetings do you think we should have? What kind of meetings do you hold in your projects? Okay, which you say these kind of meetings I must hold every week. So you say deliverables, quality, lagi apa? I mean, I'm using Malay, sorry. What is that? What else do you have? Progress meetings, okay. Progress meetings or status update meetings, right? You got progress meetings, status update. So you say these meetings is a must. Now, what is a meeting that you will not have? You say these meetings, we are not going to have it because it's a total waste of time. We focus on progress meetings, but we don't focus on these meetings. What do you think it is? As a project manager, you will tell your team members, if you have these meetings, I'm going to fire you. Still thinking? So you have never had these meetings before. Good, right? Well, actually, we take a look at it from a project point of view. Okay, the most important meeting that you must have are risk meetings. The most important meetings. That's a meeting you must have all the time. Risk. I will put very important. Very important to have risk meetings. Okay, because if we do not understand the risk in the project will not accomplish its objectives. So remember, risk can come from anywhere. It can come from outside the organization. It can come from inside the organization. All other meetings come second to risk meetings, right? In terms, like you said before, how much of money is left? How much of time is left? Any changes to the plan? What about changes to the vendor? What about weather changes? What about political changes? Now we have changes to government policy. So all those projects that are running, and suddenly we had this COVID-19 coming in, they got hit. That's a risk. So now the question is, do we continue or do we abort the project? Cut our losses and just move on. So these kind of meetings, as a project manager, we must emphasize on. And the more complex the project is, the more of these meetings we must have with the stakeholders, including, when we say stakeholders, we also mean vendors, right? So that is how you will control the project. So it's like flying a plane. Okay, if you're flying in very clear weather, very minimal control. But guess what? If you're flying to turbulence, when you know the storm coming up ahead, you're going to take very great care on how you're going to fly the plane. You're going to come up with a lot of changes minute by minute, minute by minute. You need to update all your passengers exactly what's going on. The first thing you will tell them is, fasten your seatbelt, put up your trays upright, put your seats in an upright position. No drinks, no food to be served. That's what you need to get done, right? So once you get through the turbulence, then you're going to relax. So as a project manager, we got to look out for the storms ahead. How do we know whether the storms are coming up ahead or not? Because of data and because of information. If we don't have these two, then we are just speculating. We're just going to do guesswork. And I think somebody said just now, quality. Yes, defect repair. Because once the defects get into the hand of the customer, too late. Once the defects gets into the hand of the customer, it's too late. Because branding and reputation goes down the drain. Very difficult to get the branding or the reputation back. So the project manager's job is to make sure you catch all the defects before the customer gets it. So we got to have stringent controls in place. That's why we make changes. We make all the changes to the project plan just because of this risk factor. Making sure the customer receives the project, be it in product or the service, as per what the customer wanted. So controlling the project is a very important part of the project management life cycle, right? Finally, we're going to close out the project. So when we close out the project, we close out all the contract documents and we do lessons learned. Very important. This is very important. We must do lessons learned. Lessons learned means what worked well, what did not work well. What worked well, how do we improve? So lessons learned will give us Kaizen. What is Kaizen? Have you heard of the word Kaizen approach? Can you put it up on the chat group? What do you understand by Kaizen? What is Kaizen to you? Kaizen, the Kaizen. Oh, no idea. Right. Kaizen means small. Oh, Kaizen is a Japanese word. Kaizen is a Japanese word. Okay. Kaizen simply means small improvements over time. So we do that in projects all the time. Kaizen approach. Small improvements over time. So as we do it better and as we do it more and more, we get better at it. You know, it's like playing music. When you first started to play the guitar or the drums or the bass, it was all noise. Very difficult, right? The fingers started to pain and all that. But now after 2 or 3 years, it's easy. Why? Kaizen. Small improvements over time. So we need to sit down with the team members and pick the brains of the team member. How did you do the project? Which are the places we can improve? If we were to do the project again, how would we approach it in a different way? You see? And then all the information must be put into your archive or database. For this one, you must have a database. All organizations must have a good database. Database is where all the information is stored. And then you need to have the skills upgrade of your team members. Then you need to hand over to the operation. Operations people will be the head of department or the functional manager. So you need to inform the function manager or the head of department, how did their resource perform? And finally, when you close out the project, the last part will be release the team. Because remember, it is temporary in nature. So the team will go back to their functional department and they will go back to maybe another project or back to the functional department. When they go back to the function department, that's what we call home. That's your home, right? So project is only temporary, functional department is permanent. So just as a recap, very quickly, one more time. So when we do our project planning, we make sure the baselines are done, we get all the stakeholders' approvals, we select the team members, we take a look at the complexity, and we address all the 10 knowledge areas. Executing the project, we do the project, we collect the data, we collect the information, we produce deliverables. Like somebody said just now, deliverables are very important. So all deliverables must be in accordance with the scope. As per the scope or the specifications of the project, then we need to have resource planning. And we also need to control the project, monitor and control the project, corrective action, preventive action, defect repair, make changes, do variance analysis, recheck the risk plan, make sure the customer is receiving what the customer asked for. And then finally, when we close out the project, we close all the contracts, we do the lessons learned, we update the skills register, we archive or put all the information into the database for the next project, and we have the Kaizen approach. Kaizen means small improvements over time. Okay, we do that, we release the team, and we close out the project. When the next project comes along, we repeat the whole process again. Initiate, plan, execute, control, closing out. Okay, so this is very important for us to understand, and then we close up with this. Right here, we're going to close out. I just want to show you one more time. This one here. That's what is important. Initiate the project, we plan the project, we execute the project, we close the project, and we control the whole project right throughout. Okay, so that will bring us to the end of this webinar. Do you have any question and answers? I think we have assigned you an hour or so. Now it's about 4:05. We started at 3:05, at 4:05. If you have any questions and answers, you may feel free to ask them. No extra charge. Anything on the presentation you would like to ask, or anything you would like to ask which is not in the presentation? You don't have to confine yourself to the presentation. You can also ask something outside, because I only had 1 hour. So it's like a 2-day class or 2-day workshop. I have to squeeze it in 1 hour's time. So I just give you the basics of it. If anybody has got any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm hoping you have questions. Or you can use the mic, or if you don't want, if you're a little bit shy or reserved, you can always put it up on the chat group. Okay, how do you keep several projects in check at once based on your experience? Very good. So Monica Wang has asked this question. Now, Monica, for several projects, we actually use a program management. Because if you've got several projects, you can't handle all the several projects at one go. That is not possible because all the resources are different, timelines are different, budgets are different, and risk is different. So we park them under something known as program management. So program management will be a 1 step higher than project management, because this will tell us, again, it comes back to the business case. So several projects may have the same objective. So we put them under program management, and we park one project manager who is in charge of several project managers. So several project manager will report to one project manager who now becomes a program manager. That's how you will do it. It's like the boss of a department. The boss of the department, many departments, you got many heads of department, but they all answer to the board of directors. So that's how the hierarchy is. Is the answer satisfactory to you, Timolika May? In fact, I was supposed to do this. Let me see. Okay, you let me know if this is clear for you, because I'm having a little bit of a difficulty with this whiteboard. Okay, can everybody see this, what I'm writing on the whiteboard? Yes, no?
Sorry, no, Raj, we cannot see it.
Yeah, okay, never mind. I'll just get rid of it then. It worked before, but it doesn't work now, right? Technology wise. Okay, so from Tra says how to make an effective plan for a project. Should the project manager make the plan or involve stakeholder too? Another very good question. Tra, project planning has got a process. It is very process based. So I'm going to throw the question back at you now. Okay, since you asked the question, I'm going to throw the question back at you. When you do planning, when you come to the planning stage, remember we saw initiating, planning, execution, control, and closing out. That's the project management framework. Now, when you do planning, what do you think is the first thing you will do in planning? When you come to project planning, what is the first thing you will do in planning? So now you're moving the team into the planning part. Goal and timeline. Okay, that's what you would normally do. Okay, anybody else agree with Tra, or you might have something different? Goal and timeline. Tra says goal and timeline. That's the first thing he will do in planning. What do you think that you might do? If you are the project manager, you will say, okay, and define the person in charge. Okay, the project manager, the sponsor, the team members, functional manager, all these are stakeholders that you will have, right? Okay, so you need to find out who is in charge, who is a leader for the project. Planning, remember, we're only doing planning now. What's the first thing you will do in planning? Anybody else would like to contribute? To what Tra said? Okay, so let me take it from here. So Tra said goal and timeline, which is good, Tra, which is really good. But remember, planning is a very controlled process. So the first thing we do in planning is always scope the project, SCOPE, scoping out the project. Because if you don't have project scope, then there's a lot of other things that can't happen. So when you come for the workshop, I will give you the flow for planning, how it starts from scope and ends up in procurement. And this is how we always do planning for the project. Now, the second part of the question, should the project manager make plan or involve the stakeholders? The answer is involve stakeholders. The project manager does not have all the necessary skill and the knowledge. For, say, for example, if you're doing a time plan, they may not be the project planner. So they have to go to the project planner who now takes the Microsoft project or Primavera software, they will have to come up. The project manager may not be an expert in costing. So you have to go to the costing department, right? But the project manager is the one who oversees. So they may be a technical expert. So if you have an IT project, the project manager is an IT guy or a lady. So they may be the ones in IT, but they can't do costing. They may involve in costing, but they're not experts in costing. They may not do contracts and procurement because you have a contracts department that does it. Quality is different, you see. So you have to farm it out. That's why you need team members who are good, who are very good in that particular area. So you have to form a core team. So the very first thing we do in the early part of the project is find out who do you want on your team? What kind of people do you want on your team? You see? So The two-part answer is effective project plan is a process. Project manager must involve the stakeholders for that. Right. Is it okay, Tra? You're welcome. Anybody else? Thank you so much. Anybody got some questions? I'm sure you have lots of questions. No questions? Give another couple of minutes. I'm sure you're thinking of something on the project that you're having right now, any difficulties or challenges that you might have, right?
Okay, Raj, because maybe anybody's thinking about that question. So during this
Okay.
time, yes, and we can drop the link feedback for them to complete.
Sure
And
thing.
yes, and
Sure.
if
I'll be more than
anybody
happy.
still has a question, feel free to ask
Yes.
too.
You can
Yeah.
you can always send your questions to. Oh, I have a lot of questions, but I think time is over. From Tra privately. Yeah, sure thing, Tra. Sure. Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, let me go back here to this and oops, sorry. Thank you so much for your patience and thank you so much for your contribution. Okay, where is that? Okay, there's something else coming up here. I asked for something else is happening. Okay, let me go back. Okay, that's it then. All right. Thank you so much for all your contribution and your patience. Right, it was really enjoyable. In fact, I have been to. I always get confused. Vietnam and Cambodia. Cambodia is on the other side. Vietnam is this side, right? I've been to Vietnam twice already before. I came with a few friends of mine last time, about 3 years back. 3 years back, I came. In fact, I do have a friend who's still working for an NGO there. I came to start a football program. Wanted to do some football coaching in Vietnam with the Brazil Football Center. It didn't take off, but I'm not losing hope because I plan to come back again for a very short holiday sometime once everything is over at the end of this year, possible, right? Or maybe if we have a workshop, then I can come over because Malaysia has now opened up our travel from the 8th of August. From August 8th onwards, we can travel. So I'm kind of excited because I've been stuck in Malaysia for some time and I'm a person who likes to travel a lot. So when I come over there, I can see all of you all. Thank you so much.